how we can secure the databases in information systems, right? So I think you have a subject called database management system. Maybe upcoming semester you have advanced database management system. So maybe in that first year you learn some basics, right? Anyhow, in the upcoming semester you learn some advanced things, right? Yeah, that is totally related to the security aspects, right? Today, just I will give a brief introduction about those things, right? So, end of this today's session, I'm planning to explain the basic database terminologies, right? So I don't need to explain more about the terminologies, right? Just I give a brief introduction about the terminologies. After that, we will discuss some of the security requirements for database, right? So if you are implementing a database, what are the different areas, domains you need to focus to secure, right? Let's say you are creating a database, right? Just think about you are using MySQL or MS SQL databases, right, for your company or for your organization. So at that time, you need to think about what are the different security requirements you need. You need to focus, right? So those things we are planning to discuss on that topic. Then we will look at the access control in database, how we are implementing access control in databases. Then we will look at the uh, sensitive data, right? So if you think about the sensitivity of the data, it will varying depending on different perspectives, right? So we will discuss how we can protect the sensitive data. Let's say the finally we will just give a brief introduction about data mining, right? So that is also related to data security, right? So these are the content I'm planning to discuss throughout this topic, right? So I'm planning to cover three topics today, right? The first topic is database security, then network security, third one program security, right? So the program security, most of the things we already discussed, covered. So just I will revise the things, right? That network security and database security, we are not discussed previously, right? Okay, I think you are familiar with these database terms, right? So already you know these terms, right? So if you think about database, what is database? You already know, right? The collection of data, they are defined set of rules, then they organize in a tabular formats, right? So we write the queries and we extract the data if you want, right? So database administrator, the person who uh, take responsibility to manage and uh, carry out all the tasks, right? So that is database administrator, right? He is the key role in a database systems, right? So he is the one create different roles. He is the one manage and control everything, every aspects of the database controlled by the database administrator, right? The database management system, that is a system we can use to interact with the databases, right? Relational database system. We have different database management systems, right? Relational. Now we have NoSQL, right? That is one of the different data management systems, right? So record. So record means the group of data we can say as a records, right? Then the field schema. What do you mean by schema? Connected the relations key management, so everything we are defined in the schema, right? So the sub schema means that is a portion of that schema, right? It means you have the entire schema, then we will provide different access permission for different user groups based on sub schema. Sub schema means that is a portion of the full schema. So rather than we are giving the entire schema access for a set of people, we will provide a particular individuals or set of individuals, we will give partial access to the schema, right? So attribute. So attribute means that database table columns, each column is an attribute, right? So relations means between two different tables, right? So if you have a set of columns, between the columns also we can create some relations, right? So that is the basic terms you already familiar with the database subjects, right? Okay, I don't need to explain more about these terms, right? So yeah, these are some of the example tables, right? So if you think about the database, there are different tables, they are connected each others. There are so many relationship, cardinality. There are so many things we can plot in the diagram, right? So these are some of the schema examples, right? So what do you mean by a query? So query means we can write that customizable structured query language, that query language for CRUD operations, right? Create, retrieve, update, delete operations in a database via write the queries, right? So I don't need to explain about the queries, right? So always you are familiar with the queries. By using the queries, we can insert the data, delete, update, then retrieve the data. These are the four main functionalities we can do by using the query, right? So yeah, now we will move for the security requirements of database. So already you're familiar with the database, right? So you are sound knowledge about the database and their basic components, right? Now we will look at what are the security requirements for database. Security requirements of database, right? So if you think about security requirements, let's say you are planning to design a database, right? In different perspective, in which perspective you need to think about the security, right? Just think about you're planning to build a house, right? So you're planning to build a house. So for your house, what are the security requirements you need? Tell me, what are the security requirements you need to think about or you need to give more concern?
The
If you are
assets,
planning to
our
build a
assets,
house, right? So you need to provide a perimeters, right? The surrounding the boundaries of your house. You need to build a wall, right? To secure from outside the people or outside animals. They are entering into your home. You can build a wall, right? Surrounding inside outside your house, right? So that is one perimeters. Then what else? Maybe sometime you can fix CCTV cameras, right? So that is your requirements based on the place where you establish, right? Similarly, security requirements of database in the sense, if you are developing a database, what are the different requirements? What are the different perspective you need to think about the security? So if you look at these, the first security requirement is physical database integrity. What do you mean by integrity? In the database concept, what do you mean by integrity? Integrity of data means what? Tell me first.
truthness, sir. The
Truthness,
truthness
right?
of
It
the
means,
data.
yeah, the correctness or truthness of the data, right? If integrity means we can verify the data will not change, right? The exactly the base data, the original data is stored, right? That's integrity. So if you fail the integrity means someone can do some modifications or corruptions or changes, right? That is we can call uh, integrity is broken, right? Integrity is broken on the data, right? So physical database integrity means what? Okay, just think about you have a system, right? So you have a PC, right? On that PC, we install MySQL and we create a database, right? So what do you mean by physical database integrity?
Maybe device errors. Maybe it didn't affect the our
Yeah, maybe
database
your device
accounts.
have some corruptions, right? Sometimes your power issues, right? Because of that, if your database integrity is lost, right, we can't do anything. So the physical database integrity means that physical components of the database, which is established in a particular system or particular PC. So we need to verify whether no one can access or no one can break the integrity of the database, right? So if you verify the integrity of the database is not broken, by any physical perspective, that is we can call uh, physical database integrity, right? But that is one of your requirements, right? Logical database integrity means, what do you mean by logical database integrity? Maybe you create some schemas, right? So you can create some access permission roles by using username password, right? So if someone uh, modify these logical aspects of the database, that is your failure, right? So the next requirement, the security requirements for logical database integrity, right? It means you need to ensure that uh, integrity for your database in the logical perspective, right? The physical and logical perspective. The third one, element integrity. What do you mean by element integrity? If you look at a database, you have different cells, right? Each cell is each element, right? So maybe sometimes the data contained in a particular cell, maybe that can be changed by someone. So how we can avoid those things? Maybe you can create some different user roles, right? So different access permissions. Because of those access permission, we can avoid for different categories of people have different access permission. Then we can avoid the uh, integrity, element integrity broken, right? So what do you mean by auditability? That is one of the security requirements.
Authorization, sir. We check the authorizations. Who can access, who can't access. Like
We can track, yeah, who can and what they can access. So auditor, right? If you, I think you have a subject called auditing or IT auditing or something, right? So what is the purpose of auditing? They will evaluate and they will analyze and they will uh, monitor all the things happen in a particular system, right? The auditor's job is that one, right? So similarly, auditability means for your database, you need to think who are the people accessing your database, what are the different access permissions they have. So those things, what are the different changes they are done. So everything we can monitor, right? That is one of the security requirements, right? So if you fail to consider these security requirements, what will happen? You can lose the security of your database, or you can lose the entire data set, right? So if you fail to ensure the physical database integrity, what will happen? Sometimes uh, someone can steal your system. Sometimes they, because of power voltage variations, your database system becomes failure, right? So the logical database integrity means the schema level integrity, and that different user roles and password based on, we will protect the access of your database, right? So the element integrity, element level means each cell base, right? That is a low level of the unit in the database, right? Element level integrity, then the auditability, right? So these are the four requirements. Not only these four, we have another few security requirements, right? So access control, right? That is one of the security requirements, right? So if you are planning to implement a database, you need to think about the who are the people, what are the different access permissions they have, right? We need to control the access, right? So if it is administrator, they have different permissions. They have, if they have users, they have different permissions. If they have developers, they have different access control permissions, right? So that is one of the requirement, right? The next one, user authentications. So what do you mean by authentication? So we using different username and password or biometric features to authenticate whether the person try to log into the system is authentication, right? That is, they have authorized permissions, right? That is one of the security requirements. The next one is the availability of your data set, right? Your database, right? So sometimes what will happen, if you increase the security for the peak level, you can reduce or you can decrease the availability of your data, right? So depending on the sensitivity of your data you are dealing with your database, you need to balance between the security and availabilities, right? So if you increase the security aspects for the peak level, we can reduce the automatically it will reduce the availability of your data, right? So you need to balance these aspects, right? So these are the yeah, altogether 7 different security requirements, right? So hereafter, if you are planning to develop a database, you need to think about these perspectives, right? So how we can implement the physical security, right? How we can implement the physical integrity, logical integrity, element level integrity, right? So auditability, access control, use authentication, and availability. So you need to give more concern, or you need to implement some features for these security requirements, right? Okay, next we will look at the reliability and integrity. What do you mean by reliable? So, yeah, I already explained the integrity, right? What do you mean by reliability?
Anytime available, whenever access, it will be available for anyone, the
Yeah, if your
users.
system is reliable, right? Maybe your database is reliable means we can verify the long time period our system is continuously running, right? So, is there anything happen? Maybe we have some backup mechanisms, right? If one system is a failure, right? Anyhow, we can another instance is continuously running without terminate the services, right? So the reliable means for a long period of time, we can verify your database system is worked without termination, or without bugs, without failure. Your system is continuously running for a long time of period. That is, we can call reliability, right? So the integrity means I already explained, right? So we can ensure that the data cannot be changed, that trustworthiness or truthfulness, correctness of the data, we can say integrity, right? So if you think about the integrity, we can divide database level integrity as well as element level integrity, right? So the database integrity means the entire database is not corrupted or damaged, right? So protect against damages, right? So it means your data is safe, right? That is the meaning of protected against damages, right? So the database integrity means the entire database is protected against damages or corruptions, right? If you think about element level integrity means each elements, right? Maybe the columns or cell level data will not change, right? That is the thing, element level integrity, right? So element accuracy. Accuracy means the correctness of the data, right? So yeah, just think about what is reliability and integrity, right? So integrity means we can verify there is no any modification or changes happen. We are keep the data as a original form. That is we can call integrity, right? So the reliability in the sense that is we are ensuring that service or that database is running for a long period of time without any corruptions or without any failures, right? Okay, did you heard about two-phase locking systems? Did you heard about two-phase locking in database? Tell me. Did you heard about this term? Two-phase locking in the database?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have anyone have any experience? Let's say sometimes you will do a transaction. Like let's say you can provide your credit cards or debit cards with the Ford Cities or some other shops, right? So while you are doing the transactions, right, in the middle, right? Let's say so if they put the card, they will enter the card to the machines, right? The machines will deduct the money, right? So what will happen if in the middle, if your transaction is failure? Hmm? What will happen if your transaction failure in the middle? Let's say, okay, just think about if you are purchasing a fuel, right? After you are giving your card in a fuel station, right? So maybe that fuel station they have ATM machines, right? Or maybe they have some money credit machines, right? So by using those machines, they will deduct the money, right? Let's say you consume 5,000 rupees for the fuel, right? Once you give the card, right? So normally what will happen if you give the card, that money is deducted from your account and that money is credited to the fuel station account, right? Now just think about what is the functionality happen in the middle. What is the functionality happen in the middle? There are two operations happen, right? First one, they will deduct the money. Maybe there are so many operations, right? They will check the balance, your credentiality. There are so many other processes happen, but the major task is that 5,000 money deduct from your account, then that 5,000 is credited to that fuel station, right? So just think about, let's say there are two tasks happen, right? Now what just think about in the middle, right? In the middle, the money is deducted from your account, but anyhow, before that money is credited to the account, the power failure or that internet is dropped. Because of that, the transaction is clashed. But now what will happen? Do you have any experience likewise? Anyone have faced this type of things? Maybe what is the solution for that one? That is we can call two-phase locking, right? Maybe you can learn those things here, advanced database management system subject, right? So the two-phase locking means that is the basic idea, right? So now tell me what will happen. The money is deducted from your account, but before transferring the money for that particular call station account, the power interruption, so that internet drop down happen. Because of that, that in the middle, the transaction is stopped, right? It means the transaction is not success. What is the solution for that? How the database management systems are dealing those things? Tell me how. So the solution is two-phase locking, right? Two-phase locking. Just search what is two-phase locking in database management systems, right? So it means, right? So anyone have rollback transactions? Anyone have any experience if you are purchasing or in online or if you are purchasing by using your cards, right? Sometimes the transaction is rollback. What is the meaning of rollback the transactions? What is the meaning of rollback? So the meaning is, right, like sometimes you get a notification, your transaction is failure, rollback, right? So rollback means that money is not deducted from your account. So at the time, what will happen in the two-phase locking system is working, right? So the money is transferred, money is deducted from your account, but before the money is credited to that person's account, right? If there anything happen, if there are any vulnerabilities, or if there are any corruptions, or if there are any interruption happens, right? Now what will happen? I already explained, right? The money is deducted from your account before that money is transferred to the account, right? If there anything happen, right, it will reverse the transaction, right? Reverse means there is a rollback the transaction, right? That money again credited to the account, right? So then you are getting a message, right? That not or that banking message, right? So that is we can call rollback, right? So the rollback is a very important thing, right? Just think about, right? If you think about a bank, or if you think about Daraz or AliExpress accounts, right? There are each and every second there are hundreds of transactions happen, right? So the money is detected from one account and credited to another account. Concurrently, there are so many transactions happen in the e-business platforms, right? So definitely you have a big challenge, right? That in the middle there are more possibilities the transactions can be interrupted. So how we can avoid that is the term we can call two-phase locking, right? So two-phase locking in the sense, right? If any transaction happen, let's say now we need to transfer money from A to B, right? So the money deducted from A's account and money need to credited to B's account, right? Until this transaction happen, right? They will block the read operation for the databases, right? So for that two accounts, no one can read the balance, right? While the transaction is going on, right? So let's say the money is deducted from your account until the money is transferred to that recipient, right? Between these time durations, they are using some locking mechanisms, right? So we can say that is the commit flag, right? So commit flag means while the transaction is going on, they will block the other operations for your database, right? So if they enable the commit flag, right? If they enable the commit flag, so until that transaction happen, right, until remove this commit flag, no one can try to read the account balance, or no one can access the account balance for some other purposes, right? So once the transaction is completed, then only it will allow you to do the check the balance and other operations, right? So here there are two phases, right? Intent phase, the next one is a writing phase, right? So the intent phase in the sense, in the two-phase locking system, the intent phase in the sense, everything is ready for the transaction, right? That is the meaning of intent. Intent state in the sense, in the relational database management system, right? Everything prepared to update, but it makes no changes, right? There is no any changes, but everything is ready for the transaction, right? That state we can call intent states, right? So in the right state, what will happen? The first thing they will enable the commit flag, right? So if they enable the commit flag, it will not allow to do the concurrent transactions, right? Also, it will not allow to check the balance, account balance and other things, right? So those things we can call the right phase, right? So if you starting the right phase until the right operation is completed, right? That commit flag is enabled, right? So the commit flag means between this commit flag and the commit flag enables, there is no any concurrent transaction. Any other concurrent transaction is not allowed, right? That is the meaning of this concurrent, the two-phase locking, right? So don't worry, just this is one of the security requirements, right? So just think about a situation in your account, 10,000 money is there, right? So now you transfer the money 8,000 for another person's, right? So concurrently, if another transaction is going on, right? Concurrently, okay, someone using your account, he will do 15,000 transactions. Let's say he will do 9,000 transactions, right? If those two transactions happen concurrently, what will happen? Just think about in your account, A's account, the 10,000 money is there, right? So he transfer, right, 8,000, right, 8,000 for B, right? So before the transaction is happen, right, the A, he will do a purchase in a Cargill's Food City or something, right? He will do a purchase of 9,000, right? Now, if you just think about these two transactions concurrently happen, what will happen? Only your account have 10,000, but you are doing two transactions, right? So maybe just think about if that transaction completed, now what will happen? Your account balance is 2,000 rupees. So it means there is less than 9,000. So the second transaction It's not happen because of the low balance. But now just think about, if they are not implement this type of two-phase locking, what will happen? The system is corrupted, right? So this transaction also happen, this transaction also happen. So we don't know what will happen for which transactions, right? So to avoid this type of conflict, they are using these two-phase locking. Right? Two-phase locking means nothing, right? First, they are ready phase, the intent phase. The next one, the right phase, right? So they will prepare all the things to do the transaction. Up to that level, we can say is intent phase. Once after we are ready for the intent phase, they will create a flag, that is we can call commit flag. If you enable the commit flag, it will not allow to do the concurrent transaction until the commit flag transaction will completed, right? So then it will do the right process, right process means that the amount is deducted from your account, then the amount is transferred, credited to recipient's account. So once those things, the money is transferred to the recipient's account, then only this commit flag is disabled, right? So once the commit flag is disabled, now it will allow to do the another transaction, right? So this is one way we can avoid the concurrency control, right? So just learn those things. Why I'm explaining here, this is one way to reduce the security violations, right? So if you enable concurrent transactions, sometimes they will use some tricks. Some attackers, they can use some tricks to steal your informations, right? So keep in mind those things, right? So just you can read these. What is two-phase locking? Also, there are so many resources in the internet. Just Google it for more depth level of knowledge, right? Any questions? Any questions?
So is there any same procedure when we purchasing some item online?
Yeah, normally banks are maintaining, right? So that the payment gateways, they are already implement these things, right? While you are doing concurrent transactions, maybe up to now you don't have any experience, right? Maybe if you have some debit cards or credit cards you are using for purchasing or normally, you realize sometimes the money is not detected. Sometimes what will happen in the full station, they try to detect the money two times, right? If because of some network issues or some machine issues, first time they will now we are just close the debit card to the machine, it will automatically detect, right? By mistakenly, if you do the transaction again, right, that is a concurrent transaction issue, right? So now what will happen, one transaction is happen, another transaction is rollback, right? So maybe I think most of the things you are learning that concurrency control and other things in your advanced database management system subject, right? Stored procedures, views, there are so many things are there in advanced database management system, right? So up to now you are familiar, or you can improve the knowledge up to the normalization and basic database subjects. But if you move for the industry, definitely you need to learn something called procedures, right? Stored procedures. Search about stored procedure, right? So we are not always using the database tables, right, to retrieve the information, right? If you are developing a system, we will use temporary tables, right? Or that is we can call temporary table means the views, right? So just search about views in database, right? Similarly, store procedures, right? Store procedures, right? So we will use some of the temporary techniques to retrieve the data, right? Sometimes because of security reasons, we are not directly accessing the data from the database, right? So we have created some temporary tables. From the temporary table also, we can disclose some of the information, right? So that's why I'm introduced here the two-phase locking systems, right? So you can learn a lot. Maybe if you are planning to become a software engineer, you need to know this knowledge, right? So just search or find about the advanced database concept, right? What is the use case of store procedures, right? Why they are introducing views, right? What are the benefits they are getting? What are the challenges with this? Just learn those things. Store procedure and views, advanced concept in database. Just search or go through the internet and find some information, right? So yeah, that is a two-phase locking systems, right? Okay, now we will look at some other database security concerns, right? Sorry. What do you think about error detections and correction codes? if your database is corrupted, right, it will need to restart your systems, right? Your databases need to be restarted, right? So sometimes the database have some certain level of concurrency control, right? So attackers, they will do some DOS attacks and try to stop your system, try to interrupt your systems, right? So at that time, what you need to do, right? Your database system have some facilities if your database is down, right? Or if your database face some errors, definitely your database management system need to notify or you need to give instruction to the responsible database administrator, right? So that is one of the database security concerns, right? So if something happen, some errors happen in your systems, your database management system need to disclose those informations, right, to the appropriate people who are the people who are responsible for that particular database administrators. They need to get the awareness, right? Otherwise, what will happen? Sometimes the attackers do some attacks, right, to steal your information, right? So sometimes what will happen? They will do some DOS attack to your database systems. Once the system is corrupted, then they will do some uh, other tactics to steal your data, or they will do some other operations with your database, right? So other database security concerns, the one concern error detection and error corrections codes, right? How about the recovery purposes? Is it mandatory or not? If you think about the database, what do you think about the recovery mechanism for database?
Mandatory sacrifice.
It is
Any
mandatory,
disaster
right?
happening, we want
Yeah.
to recover.
So we cannot ensure, right? Maybe sometime because of the disasters or natural disasters or some other human-made disasters. Sometime, right? We don't know, right? So if something happen, abnormal things, we need to recover the things, right? So recovery is a important aspect, right? The security concern while you are developing the database, right? So I don't think so. Maybe you are planning or you are thinking about how to do the recovery mechanisms, right? Maybe your seniors recently get some practical experience related to this recovery mechanism, right? So your senior batch, we will recruit some visiting lecturers, right? So she will conduct the sessions, online sessions, some of the on-site sessions, right? So most of the things she will discuss related to these recovery mechanism, concurrency control. Likewise, there are some advanced features, right? If someone interesting, maybe you can collect her lecture material from your seniors and you can get the enough knowledge, right? If you want, you can get the lab sheets and lecture materials. You can learn by yourself, right, to get those experience, right? So the recovery plays a major role in the database security concerns, right? So how the database system maintaining recovery? So in the database, they are always maintaining a logging systems, right? So based on the logging system, the log reports, they will do the recovery mechanisms, right? So if you want to recover the things, you need to find out what is the restore point, restore location. So how we can find out where the database is corrupted? We will continuously monitor the log reports. Based on the log reports, we will do the recovery process, right? So recovery also plays a major role in database security, right? There are so many Bayes theorem, acid properties, right? Just search those terms, right? So if you learn database, right? Did you heard about those terms, acid properties? Did you heard about this acid properties? Atomic transactions, each letter they have some meanings, right? So just learn those things. What is acid properties? Uh, there are so many things, right? There are so many principles related to database, right? There are so many principles related to database, acid properties, right? Is related to database transaction. Just search what is acid properties, right? So at least Google it. What is acid properties in database, right? Then you can learn a lot, right? So this is not related to this subject. I will explain some important terms, right, related to database, right? Those terms are important if you move for the industry, right? So that's why I'm explaining those things, right? So similarly, another important concern, atomic operations, right? So that is the first in the acid properties. The first A, it says atomic operations, right? Atomic operation mean at a time it will allow a database to do only one transaction, right? It will not do a concurrent transaction is not allowed in the databases, right? So even if it is a concurrent, maybe we realize like a concurrent transaction, but not happen. There is a queue, one transaction is completed, another transaction is started, right? That is a normal procedure, right? So just likewise, you can learn what is ACID property. So why they are introducing atomic operations to avoid that security vulnerabilities, right? If they allow to concurrency transaction, sometimes it creates more complexity or more issues for the servers, database servers, right? There are deadlock situations, right? Read write locks. There are so many advanced concepts, right? If you want, you can learn, right? That is not a more advanced, right? Anyhow, you need to learn those things, right? So the locks, read locks, write locks, concurrency control. Just search about for these things for get more understanding about security concerns, right? So other database security concerns are these are recovery, right? The error detection and error corrections, right? The locking systems, the atomic transactions. So these are some of the other major concern you need to think about the database security. Okay. Yeah. Okay, now we will look at, let's say you have a set of data, how you can define the sensitivity of your data. Tell me, maybe sometime, I don't know whether you have experience, right? If you are working in a company, right? Sometime the emails, they will send you the sensitivity level, highly sensitive, right? There is no sensitive, average sensitive, right? You can share with public, right? There are different sensitivity levels, right? So if you receive a mail, it is highly sensitive. It indicates you cannot share those emails, or you cannot take the screenshot of the email and you can post those mail in the internet, right? That is the meaning of highly sensitive data, right? That the email contain highly sensitive data. So that is the meaning of that one. So now we will look at how we can define different sensitivity level for the data, right? So to define the sensitivity level of your data, you need to worry about the different factors, right? So we can categorize the sensitivity level based on the different types of data, or based on different factors, we can define the data sensitivity, right? So if you think about the first one, inherently sensitive, right? Inherently sensitive in the sense by default, by itself, the data is secure, that sensitive, right? Inherently means by internally, the data is highly sensitive. So some example, inherently sensitive data, your passwords, right? Your bank account, credit card, debit card passwords, right? Uh, your user credentials, right? Location of weapons. Likewise, inherently these informations are highly sensitive, right? So that is one type of data we can define the security level, right? Sometimes the data we are retrieved from a sensitive source, right? The data is received from a sensitive source. Then also we can say the highly secured sensitive data, right? So the source of the data is highly sensitive, right? Let's say we are getting some of that uh, security, that army secrets or something, right? So you are getting some information from that one of that digital forensics department, right? So they share some information about the war, right? So that means there is the source of the data is highly sensitive. Because of that, we can say that data also sensitive. Sometimes some data set by default they will declare this is sensitive data, right? So sometimes that the entire data is not sensitive, but that some portion of your data is highly sensitive, like some columns or some records are highly sensitive, then we can say that is a sensitive data, right? Sometimes that sensitivity in relations to previously display information, disclose or display information in the sense, right? You are encrypt a file, right? Just think about you are encrypt a file by using a password, right? So the encrypted file and passwords we are consider sensitivity in relations, right? So if someone find out the password, they can decrypt the message, right? Similarly, those type of likewise we have different level of sensitivity of your data, right? So your data, the sensitivity level is varying depending on different perspective or different factors, right? So these are some of the examples, right? Inherently sensitive, from a sensitive source, right? Declare as a sensitive by the organization or by the individuals, right? The part of the sensitive attribute or record. The last one, sensitive in relations to previous disclosed information, right? So based on that, we can define the sensitivity level of your data, right? Okay. What's the time? Okay, I will speed up some. Yeah. Okay, the next one, types of disclosures, right? So types of disclosure means what are the different types you can display the information, right? What are the different ways you can display the information, right? So the first one, exact display, exact data display disclosure, right? Exact data disclosure in the sense, right? Actual data set is disclosed, right? Let's say some information that the election results, right? The exact data will be disclosed, right? Disclosure means just nothing, displayed, right? So exact data is displayed. That is one type of displaying disclosure of the information or data, right? So the boundary based display, right? The boundary base means we will define some lower boundaries and upper boundaries, right? So we can say in your batch, right? Uh, let's say half of the students score between 45 to 80. So that means we are defining a boundary for the data, right? That is we can call type of disclosure, bound disclosure, right? Negative results, right? So the negatively we can disclose the information. Rather than we are display the information positive way, we can negatively we can display the information, right? Sometimes we will display existency of the information, right? The probability values, right? So sometimes we don't know exact percentage. Based on the probability theory, we can tell something, right? Then that direct inferences, right? We will determine the values, right? By using machine learning or AI technology, sometimes we can determine the weather to tomorrow, right? So that's happened by the weather department, right? They will predict or they will determine the weather upcoming days, right? That is one type of disclosure, right? So sometimes by using some of the arithmetic operation, we will disclose the information, right? So the aggregation. So aggregation means we are integrating the sensitive data from the less sensitive input, right? The inputs are not highly sensitive, but anyhow they are certain level of sensitive. By using those data, by integrating those data, aggregating those data, we disclose the information. That is called aggregation disclosure, right? The hidden data attributes. So the file tags and geo tags. So that type of things also we can disclose, right? So that this is nothing, right? What are the different types of disclosures we can use for display the information in the real world, right? So that is explained by this, right? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So now we will look at the security and precision. Precision means correctness of the data, right? So if you look at the sensitivity of the data from that origin, right? This is the origin of the center is the origin, right? So yeah, this is the origin of the data. If you move from the origin to that outside, right? The sensitivity level is reduced, right? If the sensitivity level is reduced in the sense, right, it is highly uh, precise data, right? So if the sensitivity is reduced, right, in the middle, that is highly sensitive, right? It means very secretly they are maintaining the data, right? So for those data, they are less precision, right? But if you move for the outside the circle, the sensitivity of the data is reduced, but anyhow, the precision of the data is increases, right? So the sensitivity is reduced, the precision is decreases, right? So that is the thing happen from the middle to move outside the circle, right? So just compare what will happen with the security and precision two parameters. So just look at this diagram, just nothing in the origin. The most data is highly secured. If you move above this, move above from that origin, your sensitivity level is reduces, right? The sensitivity is low sensitivity. If you reduce the sensitivity of your data, then we can say the data is more precision, right? So less sensitivity means we can share the data with all other parties, right? So then each and everyone can monitor if there anything change or any modification happen, each and everyone can easily find out. So that's why we can say the precision is increases, right? Otherwise, what will happen? The vice versa also true, right? Okay, now that is a data mining, right? So data mining, I don't need to explain, right? You're already familiar with these things, right? We can extract some hidden pattern from the data, right? That is data mining, right? So for extract the data, we are using different sources. One of the sources databases, right? So I already talked you a lot about those things, right? So the quality of the data to extract the meaningful knowledge, you need to verify the quality of the data. There are so many data quality attributes are there. Right? Based on the quality attributes, the findings, output of that data analytical task will vary, right? So while you are using a data set, you need to worry about the data quality attribute and source of the data, right? So those things are impact the outcomes of the data mining task, right? So why we are look at here, right? So the if you extract some patterns or knowledge, definitely we only need to deal with the databases, right? If the database is secure, then only we can get the correct or accurate outcome from the data mining task, right? So that is a summary of the thing. Don't need to explain. Now we will look at some of the challenges related to data mining, right? So maybe if you are working as a data scientist or data analytics or whatever the data, big data analytic or whatever the data related roles, job roles, you are facing so many challenges, right? So the first challenge is correcting the mistakes in your data, right? So if you collect the data, we cannot guarantee all the data is in the correct form and correct data, right? More definitely, anyhow, you have certain records they are mistakenly or they need to correct the mistakes, right? So that's a big challenge. So the next challenge, if you are collecting a data, you have a big issue with the privacy, right? So we already discussed what is privacy. So you need to worry about the privacy concerns, right? So even if you disclose your outputs, you need to think about whether the data is privacy or not, right? So if it's a privacy related content, you cannot disclose your research findings. So that is a big challenge, right? Granular access control in the sense we can define in the data sources who can access but in which certain level they can access your data, what can access, who can access. If you manage those things, we can say granularity access control, right? So if you are doing a research, that is a big challenge, right? Who can access, what they can access. So we cannot limit those properties, right? So we cannot define you can only use the first three records, right? We cannot. It's a big challenge, right? The granular access control is a big challenge in data mining tasks, right? The next issue, how we can securely store your data, right? So you need to communicate throughout the network channels, right? So how we can do the data communication, encryption, right? There are so many challenges, right? You need to maintain the transaction logs, right? So the real-time security monitoring. In the real time, someone can do some modification or changes into your database servers. So now what will happen? You lose something, right? So avoid those things. You need to maintain the real-time security monitoring systems, right? These are some of the challenges related to data mining, right? So this is a summary of the content what we have discussed up to now. Any questions? So this is the summary what we have discussed up to now, right? So the database security means physical integrity, logical integrity, element level integrity, auditability, access control, user authentication, and availability, right? So these are the key requirements for key security requirements for database, right? So if you are planning to implement the database, you need to give concern or you need to focus on these specific areas, right? So now we will define the different types of security levels of your data, right? Based on different factors, we can define the sensitivity of your data, right? Then we will look at some of the data mining challenges with the databases, right? So this is a summary of the content, right? We will start the next topic, network security. We are planning to discuss security in networks, right? So if you are in information systems, networks is one of the major component, right? So anyhow, we need to think about the security aspects of networks, right? So first, I will give some brief introduction about the network components, right? We already discussed basic networking subjects, right? So just I will revise in few slides, then we will move for the network security concept, right? So this is the concept we are planning. This is a content what we are planning to discuss, right? Network basic concepts, right? The network threats and vulnerabilities, right? What are the different network threats and vulnerabilities? Wi-Fi security, wireless security, types of firewalls and what they can do. What is firewall? What is the functionalities of firewall? What are the different types of firewall? So we are planning to discuss those things. Then the last topic, intrusion detection systems, right? So IDS, intrusion detection system, and what are the different types of intrusion detection system we have, right? So these are the concepts we are planning to discuss throughout these network topic, right? The security network topics. These are the contents I'm planning to explain, right? So what do you mean by a network? Tell me. So just look at the diagram and tell me. So what is a network? What is the purpose of network? Why we need to create networks between the devices? So you have a mobile phone, you have laptop, maybe you can communicate. You can transfer the data throughout the network by using between these two devices, right? So we need a medium for the communication, right? So if you want to establish a network, you need a medium. So what are the different mediums you know? Tell me. Wired medium, wireless medium, right? Satellite communication. Likewise, we are using different mediums for the communications, right? So the network in the sense we are connecting two devices, not only two, maybe two or more devices we are connecting throughout the medium. Maybe that medium maybe that wired or wireless mediums, the purpose to do the communication in the sense you can transfer the data between these two devices. We create a network, that is we can call network, right? So if you create a we need some hardware components, we need some software components, so altogether we implement or we create a implement a net we implement a blueprint, or we implement a real architecture, that is we can call network, right? So the two devices connected across some mediums, right? Whatever the medium we can define, wired or wireless mediums, right? Those mediums are connected with the help of hardware and software components. They enable to do the communications, right? So nowadays, most of the people they are connected. They are using highly complex networks, right? So if you think about your home, right, you have different mobile phones, different laptops, PCs. There are so many different number of devices connected throughout a router, right? So that is one of the network, right? So it's very difficult. We find out some simple networks nowadays. We all the networks are highly complex, right? More number of devices are connected to the network. They are using different protocols and different features to do the data communications, right? So that is this is a simple example of network, right? So the network means just the electronic devices, maybe that laptop, PCs, or the computers are connected throughout the different media, maybe wired connections or wireless connections. That is we can call a network, right? So we will there are different, I already mentioned there are different types of mediums we are using that for the communication. The medium is different, right? So maybe we are using wired medium. In the wired medium we are using copper cables, right? Twisted pair cables nowadays. Rather than we are using copper cables, nowadays we are using fiber optics cables, like they are the data is transferred between the fiber optic glasses, right? So the light light is travel throughout the fiber optics cable, right? That is one of the medium, right? The wireless medium, the radio signals, they are communicating throughout the wireless medium. Microwaves, right? So that is also form of radio transmission signals, right? Satellite communication, these are the different mediums nowadays. Up to 2024 we are using this type of different mediums for the communications, right? So these are some of the example medium: cable, copper cables, fiber optics, light, glasses, right? Wireless medium, the radio frequency waves, that is wireless communication, right? The microwave, that is a one type of radio transmission signals, right? Satellite communication. These are some of the example mediums nowadays we are using for network transmission, right? Okay, now tell me, what is the serious network vulnerability? What is the serious network vulnerability? Weakness. So what is the network weaknesses? So I already mentioned you, right? So we are creating a network, right? So you are creating a network, right? So for the network, we have different medium we are using: wired medium, wireless medium, or maybe that fiber optics or copper cables, or radio frequencies, that microwave. So maybe we are using radio frequency waves, right? So now in this network communications, you have a weakness, right? Let's say, just think about different mediums, right? Just think about wired medium and wireless medium. Which medium have more vulnerability for the signal interceptions?
Wireless, sir.
Why? Yeah, it's correct, right? So
Yes.
if you compare the wired and wireless, right? So if you think about the wireless communications, because of uh, different trees or different walls, right? That is considered as a interceptions, right? So let's say you have a source, right? Let's say maybe your mobile phone is a source, right? If you make a call, right, your digital signals are travel from your mobile phone to the closest base station, right? The tower. The tower, they have some component called base stations. Your signals, in your mobile phone, the signals, the digital signals are transmitted throughout the electromagnetic signals, and they will travel to the base station. From the base station, they will transmit it to the recipient's mobile phone. Then it will again convert it into digital signals, and they can listen your audios, right? So now if you look at here, your data is transmitted as a waves, right? So so the waves are traveling throughout the air, right? So in that middle, there are so many vulnerabilities. You have possibilities, right? Someone can observe your uh, data, right? So they can listen. If you are not send, if you are sending the data without encryptions, if they observe your data, they can listen your communications, right? Similarly, sometimes some of the blockers or some of the different weather conditions, they will impact the strength of your signals received by the recipients, right? Likewise, you have so many vulnerabilities in the networking side, right? So if you are planning to develop a networks, need to face different vulnerabilities in your systems, right? So maybe the hackers, they are using this type of network vulnerabilities to intrude your system, right? If you look at this diagram, right, maybe just think about maybe that there is a big mountain is there in between. This is the base station, right? The TV broadcasting channel, right? They will broadcast the signals, right? The waves, right? If they are in the middle, is there any mountain, or is there any barriers or blocks are there? The signal strength, the received by this television, it will reduce, right? So this is a one vulnerability, weakness in your systems, right? So that's why they are established the broadcast stations in the hill country, or in the even not even if in the hill country, that signals, they have some of that wavelength, right? So within this wavelength, the signals are traveling, right? So if someone in the downside of that place, they can't receive the signal. Likewise, there are so many vulnerabilities in the networking side, right? So maybe we will discuss some of the basic vulnerabilities in the networking side, right? Any questions? Okay. uh, okay, now we will look at what are the vulnerabilities with the communication medium, right? That medium between that electronic devices, right? We already discussed different medium, wired and wireless. Now we will look at what are the different vulnerabilities we heard about between these two communication mediums, right? So what do you mean by interceptions?
Same frequency, another signals will be crossover.
Receive.
Yes, sir.
So let's say we discussed 4 types of threats: interruption, interception, modification, and fabrication. So interruption means we are blocking, right? Interception means if someone send a message in the middle, someone can maybe this need to travel this way, but this is the source, this is the recipient, right? This is the sender, he is the receiver, right? In the middle, hacker, they will observe the communication, right? This is the interceptions, right? So if you think about the different mediums we are using for the network communication, right? The wireless medium, they have high level of vulnerability, high level of risk for happen vulnerable things in the wireless communication rather than the wired communication, right? Even wired communication also, there are so many vulnerabilities, right? We need to verify that the parameters of that communication, right? If you created local area network lane connections, right, you need to think about if someone can get any channels or any wired connections, and they can observe or they can collect the data transmitted. Likewise, you need to think about those things, right? So let's say if you think about these two aspects, right, the sender and recipients, right, this is the sender, this is the person receiver, right? Between these, that if the data is traveling from senders to receiver, so depending on the medium we are using, there are different types of vulnerabilities we have, right? So if that communication happen throughout the wired medium, there are more possibilities to wiretapping. What do you mean by wiretapping? Ottu belime, right? So in Tamil, wiretapping means ottu kekkurathu, right? Ottu belime in singular, right? So that is we can call wiretapping, right? So someone can listen your communication, right? So if you are using, if you are connected throughout the wired communications, right? So if you think about the phone calls, right? Mobile, not no, mobile phone, landline connection calls, right? So if you are using landline connection calls, if you have some receivers, the transmitting receivers, let's say he in his house there is a landline mobile phone is there, right? Here also there is a landline mobile phone is there. They are connected throughout the wired connections, right? So maybe he is located in Oliville, right? He is located in Kalmuna, right? So in the middle, there are so many different places. There is a huge gap, right? They are connected throughout the wired lines, right? So it's very difficult to find out in which place someone can connect it by using some uh, transmitters, and they will wiretap the communication. We cannot guarantee, right? So if you are using a wired connections, there are more possibilities to wiretapping, right? So wiretapping is happen, right? Maybe if you are using wireless communication, what will happen? There are some receivers, transmitting receivers. By using the receivers, they will receive the transmitting signals, right? That maybe the microwaves or radio signals are received by some of the transmitters. Those transmitters, they can collect your data, and they try to destroy, or they try to observe, or they try to listen your communications, right? So what I am telling here, right, the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities with the network communication medium is varying depending on different types of medium, right? Just keep that point only. No need to think more about those things, right? So, so maybe if you are planning to implement a network for your organization, you need to think about the sensitivity of your data, right? You need to think about the what is the perimeter, what is that area your network is located, right? So maybe you are planning to locate your connections, your network within your office area, within your office building. Maybe you can verify the security aspect with the help of local area, that copper wired or fiber optics is enough, right? If you implement some physical security layers, you don't need to worry about someone can wiretapping your communication. But if your office or your branches are located in different places, in the different physical location in your country, right, then we cannot say all that wired communications lines are secured, right? So we cannot continuously monitor those things, right? So likewise, you need to define which medium we need to use for the communications, right? So here they are mentioned. Here they are compare the strength and weakness of different medium of communications, right? The network medium communications, strength and weaknesses explained by here, right? If it is a wire, if you are using a wired as a communication medium, what are strengths? What are the weaknesses? optical fibers, right? So wire in the sense copper cables, right? Microwaves, right? Then that wireless, radio frequencies, satellites, right? So just read these. Yeah, what is the strength and weakness? You can easily understand, right? So if it is a wired, copper wired medium, right? Most of the networks they are using these wired communications. Right? Why they are using wired? It's inexpensive to buy, right? To purchase that RJ45 to uh, copper cables are cheaper than compare with the fiber optics cable, right? Because of that reasons, most of the networks they are established based on copper wired communication. Also, they have some weaknesses, right? Susceptible to emanations, right? So emanation means changes, right? Susceptible to physical wiretapping, right? So if you have implement wired communication, it's easy, right? So if you have a that machine that RJ45 cutters and some other devices, maybe it's easy to in the middle. If you have a big network, it's someone can easily wiretapping your communications without any barriers, right? But not the case in optical fiber, right? So if you compare the cost, optical fiber is cost is high, right? But it's very difficult to observe. It's very difficult to monitor in your communication in the middle. But in copper wire, it's easily they can wiretapping, but it's not the easiest thing. You can do the wiretapping in optical fiber opticals cable, right? Likewise, you can read the table, you can easily understand, right? So what are the strength and weaknesses of different medium we are using for the network communications, right? Any questions? Okay, I don't need to explain this OSI reference model, right? Open system interconnection model, right? I think you learned those things, right? There are 7 layers, right? That each layer have different responsibilities. That for IP packetting, net IP assignment is by network layers, data link layer, right? So if you send a message to someone, right, your message split it into frames and packets. Likewise, there are different process happen, and then throughout the physical medium, data is transferred, right? So just refer your first year knowledge related based on OSI reference model, why they are using this OSI reference model to reduce the complexity. If there anything, any corruptions or any disruption happen, it's easy for us to check and find out the area where that interruption happened with the help of this OSI reference model, right? We need to check layer by layer, right? Where that interruption or where that corruption is happened, and it's easy for us to solve the issue. That's why we are using this OSI reference model, right? I don't need to explain these things more detail, right? You can revise the first year notes, right? That is enough, I think, right? I didn't explain this OSI reference model, right? Now we will look at threats to network communications, right? Okay, we already discussed there are 4 different types of threats, right? Interception, modification, fabrication, and interruptions, right? So these are the major 4 different types of threats we discussed, right? So this is the common term, right? Interceptions, interruptions, modification, and fabrications are common term related to threats, right? Now, if you think about these network security, these terms are a little bit changing, right? So it means these are generic terms, right? These are the genetic terms for different types of threats, right? If you think about the network security, these terms are specified in more depth level, right? So it means we have another name, right? In network security, we cannot say this one is a interceptions, right? So the interception in the sense unauthorized viewing, right? So interception means what? If you do a communication, someone in the middle they also listen your communication. That is we can call unauthorized viewing, right? That is interception. Modification means they will do some changes, right? Unauthorized guys do some changes. Fabrications means they create some new message or new data that is not coming from the authorized people, that is coming from the unauthorized people, right? Interruptions means they will block the communications, right? Someone can block your communication. Let's say you try to access a particular server, but the hackers, they try to block your communication. That is, we can call interruptions, right? Now in network security, we can call each one with specific names, right? So the interception, in the sense, we can call as a eavesdropping or wiretapping, right? So it means ottubelima, right? So if someone can right? So that is, we can call interceptions, right? So interception, especially in the network security, in the networking area, we cannot say the interception, right? So we can call interception as eavesdropping, right? Or wiretapping, right? These are the unique names, specific names for interception in networking, right? So the network people, they are not telling interception is happened, right? They are telling someone can eavesdropping or wiretapping our communications, right? That is, they will explain. For the modification, they will tell the failure of integrity failures or data corruptions, right? So while we are doing a data communication, someone can corrupt the transaction. They will do some corruption for the data. Sometimes they will, we will failure the integrity of the data, right? So if integrity failure means someone can do some modification into your data. We are not getting the exact data, right? So we will discuss hashing or digital signature to verify the integrity of the data, right? So in networking area, they will call integrity failure, right? So integrity failure, in the sense, that is a modification of the data, right? Or the fabrication. Fabrication means they also create a dummy data, fake data. The fake new data is created, right? That is, we can call fabrication, right? That is also, we can call as a integrity failures or data corruptions, right? The last one, interruption. Interruption means we will stop accessing the particular service, right? So in networking term, we can call denial of service attack, DOS attack, right? DDoS or DOS attack means they will hackers, they continuously send bulk amount of requests to the server. Because of that, the server is down, right? So they will interrupt the service, right? So the interruption is, we can call as a denial of service in networking terms, right? So maybe if I ask you, can you explain denial of service based on the networking perspective? Maybe you need to explain the interruption. Actually, you need to explain the interruption, but I'm asking you in the DOS perspective of network, right? Okay. The next one, security perimeters. What do you mean by perimeters?
The aspects, sir.
Sorry.
What are the aspects we need to concern when talking about the security? That's the thing, sir.
Perimeters, in the sense, that is a boundary, security boundaries of your network, right? Let's say if you think about that CIS lab, we have a CIS lab, that is one of the security perimeters, right? So within the CIS lab, we separately maintain some security perspectives, right? If inside the CIS lab, we have a wired communications, right? So we need to define the network security aspects within that CIS lab. But if you think about the Mac lab, we don't have wired communication here. On that CIS lab, we are using wireless communication, right? So we have separate perimeter, security perimeter for that Mac lab, right? So the security perimeter means there are some certain aspects related to ensure the security of a particular area, right? So that's a boundary. We define the boundary for a networking network, right? For a network, if we can define a security boundary, that is, we can call perimeters, right? So if you think about an organization, right, they have different branches, different buildings, right? So each building, they are separately maintain a security perimeters, right? So that is, they are explaining each place have security perimeters. Right? Within each perimeter, you largely have control of the cables and devices and computers because of physical control, right? If you have a separate perimeter, depending on the equipments you are dealing with that particular lab, the security perimeters are varying, right? So if you are using wired communication, wired network, you need to consider different type of security perimeter. If you are using wireless communication, you need to think about different security perimeters, right? So if you're let's say if you think about the university, we have each laboratory, we have separately maintained security perimeters, security features to avoid unauthorized access or unauthorized things happen through the throughout the network, right? Now the problems create right? If you have a specific security parameters within that particular laboratory, you don't have any issues, right? Now there are some situations you need to connect between two different laboratories through a common network. I just think about, we have a MEC laboratory in the ground floor. Maybe we have that CIS laboratory in the first floor. Right now, if you want to connect these two laboratories, right, sometimes we need to do a wired communication. So some other configurations, right? You need to create a medium for communication between these two laboratories, right? So at the time we are facing issues, right? So if you're at the time, if you're connecting different security parameters together by using any medium, so at the time the vulnerability uh, possibilities are occurs, right? So maybe we need, let's say, think about, we have one laboratory in faculty, another laboratory in arts faculty, right? So if you want to communicate, so separately arts faculty laboratory as well as faculty laboratory, they implement some security parameters. But if you are connecting these two laboratories throughout the wired connections, we need to physically put some pipes and wire, then we need to go into the next faculty, right? So at that time, in the middle, there are more possibilities to some weaknesses or vulnerabilities, or some security attacks happen for the networks, right? So separately, each perimeter is secured, right? So if you have a server, separately you have a security, right? So here you have a security, right? So you have security. But let's say you are planning to connect these two throughout the cloud computing, right? Maybe you are planning to connect these two throughout the cloud. So now what will happen? Uh, your risk is increases, right? Maybe separately your perimeter is secured, but you are connecting with other parameters throughout the network. You are facing so many challenges and weaknesses, right? So at that time only your system faces some attacks by different people, right? So the security perimeter is just nothing. They are verifying the security features of a particular network. Depending on the type of the network, the security parameters are varying, right? Okay, the next topic. Yeah. What makes a network vulnerable to interception? Okay, sorry for that interruption, right? So, yeah, what makes a network vulnerable to interception, right? Just think about what is interception. Interception means someone unauthorized guy, they can observe, or they can wiretapping your communications, right? That is, we can call interceptions, right? So if we have implemented network, right, in the middle, someone can join inside the network, and they will do wiretapping or eavesdropping is happened, right? So the weaknesses is the anonymity, right? So the one weakness, anonymity is a one weakness, right? Right. Just think about, if you are doing a maybe your office is established in cloud computing, right? One of the virtual laboratory in cloud, you have another physical laboratory that is CIS lab. They are connected. That cloud laboratory is connected with CIS lab, right? Now the anonymity in the sense, right? There are some anonymous people, right? They are not close to that organization, or they are not working in the organization. Someone, they are far away from that different places. They're hiding uh, their role. They are hiding their identity, original identity, and they try to do some attacks, right? That is, we can call anonymity, right? So if we don't uh, hide your identity, they can't do the attack, right? So what I'm telling, because of this anonymity, right, it creates more attacks to the different systems, right? If it is there any, is there if there is no any ways to hide your identity, they didn't do the attacks, right? So if they do attacks, if they can't hide their identity, definitely we can find out the guy, right? But we have some advanced technologies, we can hide our identities, right? So that IP spoofing, right? There are so many things, right? So So by using those technologies, what will happen? They will hide their identity, right? The proxy servers, there are different technology they are using, then they will hide their IP address and some other identical informations. Then they will hide their identity. That is, we can call anonymity, right? So anonymity means we cannot find out who is the person done this attack, right? So because of that, the vulnerability is increases for the networks, right? Many point of attacks, right? The many point of attack in the sense, if you think about the large complex networks, there are different places, right? There are different wired and wireless communication happen. There are different points are there. It's very difficult to find out the point where exactly the hackers try to intrude the system, right? So because of that also, it's the vulnerabilities of that network is increases, right? The sharing, right? So normally it's very difficult to create a network without sharing the data, right? So the purpose of that network is share the information, right? So if you avoid sharing the information, that is a waste, right? Your network is waste, right? So because of sharing the data between the network with different components or devices, that is one reason for increasing the vulnerabilities, right? So if you are sharing some informations, right? With that sharing, you need to share most of the things, right? The header file it contains your IP address, your destination IP address, your MAC address. There are so many information is attached with that packet headers, right? So based on that packet headers, if someone hackers listen your packet and they will extract some information based on that, they try to do some attacks, right? If you stop sharing these, nothing will happen, right? But we cannot avoid to share the data between the networks. The major the ultimate objective of that network is sharing the data between the endpoints, right? So that is one, sharing is one of the major weaknesses in networks, right? System complexity, right? I don't need to explain more about the complexity, system complexity. If nowadays, even if you look at your house network, there are so many devices, right? So many mobile phones, laptops, PCs. Nowadays we have some IoT modules also, right? They're also smart switches, they are connected to the network, right? So nowadays the complexity of the system day by day increases. That is one of the reason for increasing the network vulnerabilities, right? So unknown perimeters, right? Sometimes we are connected with that public Wi-Fi, right? Or sometimes we are connecting the network that's unknown networks, right? So if you try to connect with that unknown network, sometimes they will observe your information or they will observe your file system. So anything happen, right? So that is also one weaknesses in the network interception, right? So these weaknesses helps to intercept your communications, right? To eavesdropping or wiretapping is happen because of these weaknesses in the network, right? Unknown path, right? So unknown path means also while you are sharing the data, we don't know what is that source, destination, and source and destinations, right? So what are the nodes, source node and destination node? Between these, where the what is the location? It will travel, right? If some hacking devices are in the middle, your data is going through that unknown hacker's device, right? That is not a good practice, right? So unknown path also one of the weakness, it creates interception of your communications, right? Okay, the next, the modification and fabrications, right? So the modification means we will change. Fabrication means we are creating a new data, right? So the new data or modification means we are corruptions. We are creating or we are corrupt the data, right? So you don't need to explain this here, right? Okay. These are the source of data corruptions, right? So these are the different places that source of data corruption happen, right? The data is modified or the data is fabrication, right? The modification or fabrication happen in these different ways, right? So let's say this is a client computer. The client need to access the server, right? So in between the communication between the client and server, there are different places, right? Your data can be corrupted, right? So just look at one by one. So if you are doing a communication data transmission between the client and server, right? Between your communication, the data to the client to server, there are different places you have possibilities your data be corrupted, right? So the first thing, typing errors, right? Maybe sometimes you will do some mistakes. The human make mistakes, so you can did some typing mistakes, right? Sometime in your PCs or in a client computer, they have some malicious codes, right? So they create some corruption on your data, right? Sometimes in your hardware failures, right? Sometimes the software flaws, right? Maybe in the transmission medium they have some problems, right? Maybe you are wired or wireless transmission medium. Between the medium you have some issues, right? The hacking activities in the wireless communication medium, right? Inside the medium, wired or wireless medium, there are some hacker activities also create data corruptions, right? The noise as accidents, right? So noise as an accident in the sense, if you are using a wired communication or wireless communication, right? Mostly the noise issues happen in the wireless communications, right? The accidents happen in the wired communication, right? In the middle, the connection, the lane connection, the wired connections are broken because of some natural disasters, or we don't know, right? So that is also create a data corruption, right? Sometimes in the server side they have some programming errors, right? The human mistakes. So these are the reasons the data corruption happen, right? The next one, interruptions, right? So interruption means the loss of services, right? So we will stop accessing that service. That is, we can call interruptions, right? So interruption means DOS attack, denial of service attack. They are stop accessing that particular services, right? So to avoid these interruptions, nowadays we are using routing tables, right? So the routing tables help us to achieve the uh, uh, help achieve the completion of the data communication from source to destination, right? With the help of routing tables, right, we can efficiently share the data, right? Also, so if someone can misuse that routing tables, it creates some loss of data, right? So if someone intruders or some hackers intrude your routing table, if they do some changes in the routing table, it creates loss of services, right? Sometimes that loss of service interruption happen because of excessive demand, right? Let's say excessive demands mean your system have the capability to access 50 concurrent access, right? At a time, maybe you get 52 or 53 concurrent access. What will happen? You are facing an issue, DOS, right? The loss of services because they have excessive demand, right? Your system have specific capabilities, but if you try to access more than specific capacity, then you can face an issue, excessive demand. The demand is 50, but you are getting 100 or 60 requests from the different client to the server, then your server is down, right? That is a loss of services, right? Sometimes your component failures, right? Your server side component failures or in your network device failures. So these are some of the reasons for happening the interruptions, right? Interruption means loss of services, right? Like a loss, denial of service, right? The service accessing the service is interrupted, right? That is we can call interruptions, right? These are some of the reasons, like misuse of routing tables, right? Excessive demand, component failure. These are the reasons for happening a interruptions, right? Okay, now we will look at the vulnerabilities in the wireless communication. If you think about the vulnerabilities, if you think about the vulnerabilities in your networks, compare with the wired communication, the wireless communication, they are facing more vulnerabilities, right? So that is the first point explained, right? If you compare the vulnerabilities. So if you think about that vulnerability, network vulnerabilities rather than the wired communication, wireless communication, they have more vulnerabilities, right? So now we will look at the first point. Wireless communication will never be secured as wired, right? So it means more vulnerabilities in the wireless communication compared with the wired communication, right? Why they are telling this? Can you justify this statement? Why uh, rather than the wired communication, wireless communication are more vulnerable? What is the reason for that? Wired communication, that is like a close network, right? So if it is a wire, if the wired is broken, then only that interruption happened, right? But if you think about wireless, maybe if you think about wireless communication, we are transmit the signal to the environment, right? So maybe in from your device, the digital signals are electronic signals are transmitted to the environment, right? Those signals are received by the particular base station, right? The tower, they have base station receive the signals, right? So between the source device and the base station, your signals are travel in the open space, right? So in the AI, your signals are travel. So at that time, what will happen? There are more vulnerabilities, right? But not the case in wired communication, right? If it's a fiber optics or whatever the copper cables, they are covered, right? They are sealed. Uh, the cables are wired cables are sealed, right? So if you compare with the wired communication, wireless communication have more vulnerability because of the signals are transmitting throughout the open environment, right? Open space, right? So now we will look at some of the threats related to wireless networks, right? The first threat is confidentiality, right? So confidentiality means we can not allow access for unauthorized people your data, right? Only authorized people can access your data, right? The secretness of your data we can call confidentiality, right? But if you think about the wireless communication, the signals are traveled throughout the open environment, right? So how we can avoid this type of threat? So how we can maintain the confidentiality in the open environment? Tell me. How we can achieve confidentiality in wireless communication? Anyone? So normally we are using wireless, right? We have routers, we are connecting the routers. The data transmission happen in the wireless communication throughout the open environment. The data transmission happen. Then tell me how we are maintaining the confidentiality. Already know the answers, you guys. We are
Using the
using
secure connection, sir.
yeah,
Right.
we are using that encryption techniques that the packets they are connected with packets. Likewise, the packets are encrypted. Packets are sent to that. So likewise, we can use we can avoid the threats related to confidentiality, right? To maintain the confidentiality, we are using the encrypted communications, right? We are splitting the packets and bits and bytes, and we will apply some encryption techniques and we will share, right? Otherwise, if you are sending the data directly, anyone can look at the anyone can observe your signals. If you have that device to observe your signals, and they will decrypt the message, right? Not decrypt. If you are sending a plain text, then they will look at the messages, right? So that's why we have different protocols, right? We will next couple of slides, I will explain the protocols related to wireless. Then different protocols, they have different strengths and weaknesses, right? Day by day, they will increase the protocol set of rules, right? Nowadays we are using web 2, right? So web 2 means that is one of the protocol. Previously we are using web. Then before that we use web VEP. Likewise, we have different set of protocols for do the wireless communication. If they realize some of the vulnerabilities and attacks in that medium, then they will upgrade their protocols, right? We will discuss upcoming slides, right? So the next one is the integrity. So integrity means someone can change your code, right? Change or corrupt the data, right? So that is also happened, right? Because we are doing the communication throughout the open air, right? In the wireless communication. Availability. So how the availability vulnerability? So let's say if you think about, you have a routers in your home, right? So if you look at the different environmental conditions, right? If you have a heavy rain, what will happen? Your signal strength is weak.
Connections will
Why?
be, yeah, sir.
What is the reason for that one? So if you want to transmit the data, right, the data travel throughout the open air, right? So if you heavy rain, that medium is that the data transmission medium have some barriers, that blockers. Because of that one, the data transmission becomes slow, right? So that is one way we can facing an availability issues, right? So sometimes you have building blocks, right? Let's say if you have more number of trees or some more different number of buildings or some blockers or barriers, that is also create interruption of your wireless communications, right? That create that is the reason for availability issues, right? So to achieve the availability, because of these barriers and that blockers, it will create a failures, right? Sometimes power failures, because we are converting the digital signal into electromagnetic signals, and we are transmit throughout the mobile phone to the base station, right? At the time. So maybe if you have a bad weather conditions or different factors influence your wireless communication, right? But not the case in wired communications, right? Okay, the next one, there are a few other vulnerable weaknesses. Right? Unauthorized Wi-Fi access, right? That's also a weakness in wireless communication, right? So sometimes we will find out some open Wi-Fi, right? So we don't know what is the open Wi-Fi protocols, right? How they will, maybe sometimes they are unknown, the hackers, they will open some Wi-Fi protocols. That protocol have directly access your file systems, right? Or directly access your mobile phone gallery. So if you are joined throughout this type of Wi-Fi protocols, now what will happen within 5 minutes? If you are using their Wi-Fi, they will store your information, right? Sometimes some of the Wi-Fi protocols, they have some weaknesses, right? So because of these weaknesses, sometimes we loses the data. Someone can maybe just think about the early decades, they don't implement encrypted uh, Wi-Fi channels, right? So the encrypted Wi-Fi protocols they are not using. So at the time, what will happen if someone can using that transmitters, they will observe the data packets and they will read the message, right? That's also possible, right? So nowadays we are using highly secured web 2.0 protocols for wireless communication, right? Yeah, this is the first one, right? Wired equivalent privacy, right? WEP, right? This is the early decades, early years. We are using this WEP wireless protocols, right? So it means this one also using the encryptions, right? They have some pre-shared keys, right? So let's say if you want to connect it throughout the wired equivalent privacy protocols, right? That is one of the protocol we are using for wireless communication, right? We have two devices, that client and access point, AP, right? So they between the client and AP, they are using a shared key, right? So the access point send a random number to the client. Give me a minute. So the access point send a random number to the client, right? That which client then encrypt using his keys, right? Then he will return to the AP. Then AP decrypt the number by using the key. He will share with that access point, right? Then the communication establishment, right? Likewise, in this, you don't need to worry about these things, right? Uh, Wired equivalent privacy is a protocol we are using for wireless communication, right? This is more advanced things for the network guys. For software students, it's not mandatory. Okay. So you don't need, I don't need to explain more detail those things. If you want, you can refer, but it is more important for the network guys, right? So you also are software students, so I omit this part, right? So there are some weaknesses with that WebP, wired equivalent privacy protocol. They have some weaknesses, right? The encryption key weaknesses, static key. They are using only static key, right? The key always same key, right? They have so many weaknesses because of they are using static key. To avoid these things, they introduce a web Wi-Fi protocol access, right? In 2003, they introduced. Now we are using Web 2.0, right? uh, WAP2, right? So that is more up to now we are using those things, right? Maybe if we are facing any issues or any vulnerabilities, maybe in the future they can enhance their protocols, right? So here they are explaining the strength, right? In the web in WAP, WEP, right? They are using static, but if you think about WAP, WAP, they are using dynamic encryption keys, not as the non-static encryption key. Likewise, they are using different advanced techniques to avoid the previous issues they are facing with the WEP, right? So see, these are some of the wireless access protocols, right? Now we will move for the firewalls, right? So I think you heard about the term firewall, right? What is the purpose of firewall? Please give me another 15 minutes, right? I try to finish everything within 15 minutes, right? So you don't have any lectures by tomorrow, right? I will not conduct the lectures. Today is the last lecture. Okay. So those who are need to do the presentation, be ready for that in that examination time, right? Okay. I think what is the purpose of firewall? We are using firewalls. So actually we are
So
using
many.
it will filter the traffic, right? So normally, sorry, normally we are using the firewalls to filter the traffic, right? So let's say you have a network. So if someone outside the people try to enter or try to share something, we will define the special thing here in the firewall. We can define set of rules, right? So based on the rules, the firewall works, right? So you can define set of rules, then those set of rules are acceptable, then only it will allow to the traffic. Otherwise, it will stop the traffic, right? So the firewall is a device that filter all the traffics between protected or inside protected network or inside the network and less trustworthy or outside the network, right? So maybe inside your network, you can develop some firewalls. Maybe outside of your network, you can develop a firewall, right? So the firewall actually means we will define set of protocols, right? Which IP addresses they can share the data, right? What is the port they need to communicate? So everything we can define in the IP firewalls, right? So firewalls mean we can define if a certain range of IPs we are not allowed, right? Sometimes we will access the devices or access the data throughout this particular port only. Maybe we are using some of the protocols they can access the firewall, right? Maybe UDP or SMTP. Likewise, we will define set of rules. Those rules are okay, then only your firewall is allowed to do the data traffic, right? Otherwise, it will block the traffic, right? So firewalls are implement security policies that determine what traffic can and cannot be passed through the network, right? So if you have a network, if you implement the firewall, depending on the set of rules, right, the policies you are defined for the firewall, it will allow to do the traffic, data traffic, or it will not allow to do the data traffic. Firewall is nothing, right? Normally, the firewall is just like a computer systems, right? We have a computer systems with memory, storage, and all other devices, right? For those devices, they have some operating systems too, but we are defining some set of rules, right? If they satisfy the set of rules, then only it will allow you to do the data traffic throughout your network. Otherwise, it will block the network, right? That is the thing, the basic idea about the firewalls, right? So it will control the flow of the data, right? That's a functionality of a firewall, right? So the qualities leads to effective control of firewall. The two qualities, two characteristics that can be lead to effective control of the firewall. The first one, well understood traffic flow policies, right? Well understood traffic flow policies, right? The flow policies in the sense that set of rules, right? In the firewall, we will define set of rules, right? Normally, rather than you are writing more complex rules, right? If you write a simple policy is good for the traffic control flows, right? So this is the one of the simple example table, right? Yeah, this is one of the simple table. They will define the set of rules, right? The first rule it defines, it will allow TCP protocol, transfer control protocol, right? The source address, any addresses it will allow to access, but the destination address they can access with this particular IP 192.168.1. Whatever the value 0 to 255. The destination port, the 25 throughout the 25 port, then only it will allow. It means the permitted, right? If you notice here, the UDP protocol, right? Similarly for all the sources acceptable, but here also they maintain the destination IP address, but that destination port is 65, right? So they are permitting. But if you look at the sixth rule, the same UDP, but here they are mentioning it will not. What is the meaning of this one? The sixth rule, it will DENY, right? So DENY means if someone try to access the access the protocol, access the traffic throughout the UDP port with this particular IP. But if they try to access any port, it will not allow to access, right? Only it will allow throughout the 69th port, right? So likewise, we can define some set of rules, right? That is the firewall working, right? The functionality of the firewall based on the set of rules we are defining, right? So here they are explaining well understood traffic flow policies, right? So rather than we are writing more complex firewall protocols, if you are writing a uh, well understood traffic policies, it is easy for you to filter the networks, right? Yeah, this is an explanation, right? Just read this, right? The next one, trustworthy design and implementations, right? So once you design your firewall, the designers strongly recommend to keep functionalities of the firewall simple design, right? Rather than you are using more complex design. If you are using simple design, it's easy to filter the traffic, right? So it's a simple design in the sense, rather than you are specifically designed for all the protocols, all the ports, just you can allow only throughout this port you can allow. All other ports are stopping, right? So it means in the previous example, in the design they are maintained for UDP only 69 port. All other ports are DENY, right? So you don't need to worry about. So otherwise, what will happen? You need to allow only for the 69 other all the ports. You need to separately design DENY the design. So don't do that way. The good practice is you can design your firewall firewall configuration more simplest way, right? To avoid the more complexity, right? Otherwise, what will happen if you define more complex set of rules? Sometimes because of careless, we will block some protocols we need, but because of more complexity, sometimes we will block some wanted firewalls as well, right? So you don't need to worry about these things. These are the different types of firewalls, right? Types of firewalls are packet filtering gateways, right? Screening routers, another name. Stateful inspection firewall, application level gateways, critical level gateways, guards, personal firewalls, right? Just get the names. What are the different types of firewalls, right? Packet filter, stateful inspection firewall, application gateway firewall, also known as proxies, right? So proxy is a firewall, right? That is application level gateway, circuit level gateways, guards, and personal host firewalls, right? So they will explain detailedly these firewalls, right? Packet filter gateways, stateful. Just you can read those things, right? Also, just look at this comparison, right? I didn't explain more detail, right? Because you have a full day lectures, right? So just you can read. I will share the slides, right? Now we will discuss this one. What firewall can do and can't do, right? So the firewall can protect an environment only if they control the entire perimeters, right? Firewall do not protect data outside the perimeters, right? If you define a firewall for a particular area outside the communication, outside the traffic, it will not control, right? Firewalls are most visible part of the installation on the outside, so they are an attractive target for attackers, right? So firewall, we cannot hide the firewall, right? So if you implement a firewall, hackers they try to access the firewall and try to do some unwanted things, right? Another thing, you must configure your firewall in correct way. Otherwise, you cannot complete your day-by-day data traffic transmissions, right? So for that one, you need to design your firewall rules, set of rules in a accurate and simple way, right? So these are some of the things. The last part is the intrusion detection systems, right? So intrusion detection system means they will monitor all the activities happen inside your networks, right? If someone can try to do some malicious things, it will block those things, right? So intrusion detection system is monitor users and system activities, audit the system configurations for vulnerabilities and misconfiguration, assess integrity of critical systems and data files. Yeah, just you can read those things, right? So intrusion detection system means just a system, it will observe the input and output, all the things. Everything is monitored, and if someone intruders enter to the system, it will do the alerts, right? So these are intrusion detection. This is the flow chart of the intrusion detection systems, right? So they have defined some low level events for the intrusion detection system, right? Now, if some any event happen, they will analyze the event. Based on that, it will call the countermeasures, right? Countermeasures in the sense it will do some control mechanisms, right? Based on the control mechanism, it will react, right? This is a flow chart of the how the intrusion detection system is working, right? We have different types of intrusion detection system, right? Based on the detection method, we can categorize the intrusion detection system, signature based intrusion detection system, heuristic intrusion detection systems, right? Just we can read, there are simple things. Also, we can categorize the intrusion detection system location based, right? Front-end monitors traffics, internal monitors inspect all packet. Likewise, we can categorize scope-based intrusion detection system, a host-based intrusion detection system, network-based intrusion detection system. So based on the scope also, we can categorize the intrusion detection system. So finally, capabilities. Based on the capabilities also, we can categorize the intrusion detection system, passive and active. These are the two types of intrusion detection systems, right? These are the summary of the things, right? The program security means the software securities, right? So if you are developing software programs, or if you are using different software programs, how you can secure because of your program code issues, also it creates some issues, right? So if you're that's malicious codes in your program, so if you are using some uh, if you are using some of that cracked versions, right? So these are some of the software programs, right? So you need to think about the security of your programs as well, right? So that is the content we will discuss here, right? So we will discuss that programming flows, right? What are the different programming errors, right? Also, we will discuss the virus, right? How the virus signature, right? If it's a virus, what is the signature, right? If you notice, right? Let's say if you are using an antivirus, how the antivirus identify whether it's a virus or if there are any corruptible programs, right? So if you have installed your antivirus software in your PCs, that antivirus software detect the viruses. How they will find out those viruses, right? So there are some mechanism to find out the virus signatures, right? So those are the things I'm planning to explain, right? I didn't do more depth level, right? Just I will scroll and tell some important points. Just I will share the slides, you can refer, right? So what do you mean by buffer overflow? This is one of the programming errors. What is this? Did you heard about this buffer overflow? Buffer overflow. Okay, this is an example code for buffer overflow. Tell me, what is that? This is an example code for buffer overflow. Tell me, can you find out what is buffer overflow by looking this the code? If you look at this code and tell me what is buffer overflow. This is an example code for buffer overflow. Can someone tell me quickly? Just go through the code, the very basic for loops code, right? There is an array is there, just nothing. Tell me. What will happen? That is buffer overflow.
So when we come to the last element, already we assign, but when for loop running, maybe the error for to override something. Size already we declared, but also we assign the values also. That time the memory problem will be arise, like index
Yeah,
outbound directly.
what about others?
Memory will be waste, sir. We declare as a
Mm.
10 value, but only the 9 value will be filled.
So I think you didn't understand, right? That it's okay a little bit, but overflow means what? So just read the first paragraph, right? Buffer overflow often comes from innocent programmers, right? So innocent programmers means they are not expertise in the programming levels, right? So the buffer overflow means they will consume more memories in your systems, right? So that is we can call overflows, right? Right.
I mean, rather than usage, sir.
Yeah, maybe let's say you need a let's say you are using a simple calculator, right? That calculator for only integer values, right? So but you are creating more number of sizes, right? So it means it is related to your memory consumption, right? If you're running an application, right? So definitely based on the size you allocated or based on the type of the data you are using, integer or long. Likewise, in Java, we have different size, right? So it means the size of that variable is varying, right? So depending on, let's say you are using only 2-digit integers, but you are using a long digits, right? So the data type is long. So it means it will take more memory in your application, right? If you are running an application, if you consume more memory, it is not a good practice, right? So if that is buffer overflow, right? So rather than your existing space, you are using more consumption of the services, right? The resources, right? You have a certain level of consumption. You need a specific size of the data, but you are using excessive usage, right? Sometimes this one also happen, right? You are defining a simple array with a 10 or maybe 50 elements. You are trying to enter 51th element, right? That is also we can it creates an errors, right? So without clear idea about that programming concept, if you write something, if you write some program, it creates a buffer overflows, right? So now think about how this buffer overflow becomes an issue in security perspective.
Using the unwanted space, the attackers maybe
Maybe if you have some issues, right, by using those unwanted things, memory allocation, the attackers use something and try to destroy or try to steal some of the key informations throughout your log reports or your bug. Maybe sometimes you are facing an issue, the compiler issues or something happen, right? If they let's say you are creating an array with 10 elements, right? But you are only in enter the 2 or 3 elements, right? The attacker, they try to check with more number of elements and they will find out some log reports, right? So the compiler errors, and while you are getting some compiler errors, they will get some server information related to your compiler versions and some other information, right? Based on that, they will do some attacks, right? You don't need to worry about, right? Yeah. So the memory organization is explained by here, right? So heap stack, I think you know those things, right? So I don't need to explain, right? Memory organization you will discuss in your platform technologies, right? In your operating system, you know how the memory is organized in the RAM, right? Mm, so just you can omit, yeah, just harm from buffer overflows, right? Yeah, just look at these two things, right? Harms from buffer overflows, right? So if you write a program with buffer overflows, right, another piece of your program's data, right? So you are overwriting another piece of your program's data, right? So if you consume more data, maybe sometime you have a 4 GB memory, right? So if you are failed to optimize your memory allocation, sometimes you cannot run your application for some uh, electronic devices. They have certain memory capacities, right? Override the instructions in your programs, right? Likewise, there are so many harms happen because of these overflows, right? So just you can revise, right? I didn't get any questions mostly based on this buffer overflow, right, for your batch, right? So don't worry about those things. I need to explain those things, but it takes around 1 hour, right? If I try to explain. So the countermeasures, the control measures to buffer overflow, right? Check the length before writing, right? So if before write the program, you need to check the length, right? Confirm that array subscribe are within the limits, right? So you are creating an array. So you need to define what is the length of the array, whether we are using all the array elements for these programs, right? Double check the boundary conditions code, right? Limit inputs to the numbers, acceptable characters, right? So uh, just omit these buffer overflow, right? So just nothing. I will explain the basic, right? Just that is enough, right? So the malwares, right? So it is a programs planned by the agents, the hacker agents with malicious intent to cause undesirable effect into your programs, right? Also, we can call malicious codes or rough programs, right? The most popular forms, virus, worms, and Trojan horse are the most popular forms of malwares, right? A virus is a program that can be replicate itself and pass on malicious code on other non-malicious programs by modifying them, right? So the virus or by itself, it will modify the codes, right? It infects other health subjects by attaching itself to the program and either destroying the program coexistence with, right? Worms, the program that spreads copies of itself through a network, right? Worms, it will spreads the copies of itself, right? Trojan horse is a program, good apparent effect, but second hidden malicious effects, right? So just you can differentiate what is worm, virus, and Trojan horse, right? These are the characteristics of different malwares, right? The virus, Trojan horse, bombs, rabbits, right? Logic bombs, time bombs, droppers. So these are some of the malicious codes, the malwares, right? So maybe we are familiar with virus, Trojan horse, and worms, right? Not only those, there are so many other logic bombs, and there are so many other malwares, malicious codes are there. Just read those tables, right? So yeah. Harms from malicious codes, right? The malware, what are the harms? To users and systems, we are getting different harms. To the world, we are getting different types of harms, right? So the malicious code sending email to user contacts, right? Deleting or encrypting the file. The malware, they can sometimes encrypt the files. We can't decrypt these things, right? Sometimes they are deleting the files, right? Modifying the system information, right? So sometimes the malware is do some modification in your registry file systems, right? Maybe if you notice sometimes, right, your pen drive is write protected. What will happen if your pen drive is write protected? Means what? Tell me. Maybe you have some pen drives with write protections, right? So it means you cannot copy any content to the pen drive hereafter if your pen drive is write protected. That is one way of attack, malicious attacks, right? So maybe some of the viruses, right, they will do the system files, right? They will do the changes for your system file, right? So in your pen drive, in pen drive system codes, it will do some changes, right? So write protection means uh, if they enable the write protection, no, you cannot do any changes, any copy paste to the pen drive, right? If you have any contents, that content is available, but you cannot move any file from your PCs to the particular pen drive. It's like you need to throw the pen drive. You can't do anything with the pen drive, right? That is a write protection pen drive, right? Similarly, sometimes the malicious code do some modification in your Windows registry, right? So the registry, if they do some changes, you can't do anything, right? So all the settings and the configurations are done in the Windows registry, right? So if they do changes in the registry files, so that is a malicious effect, right? Stealing sensitive information, right? Your passwords, your key lockers, everything. Sometimes malicious codes are sent, right? Attached to a critical system file, right? Sometimes your system files are corrupted because of these malicious codes, right? Sometimes they will hide the copies of malware in multiple complementary locations, right? Sometimes we know that how to say. It create multiple copies of the malware in different places, right? So maybe it's very difficult to find out and delete all the malwares, right? So similarly, they are creating harmfulness for the world, right? So some malwares, they will detect the entire servers, right? So because of that attacks, the entire system is down for a particular time period, right? So that is one some type of effect for the servers, right? Sometimes the servers also corrupted because of these malwares, right? So then the service is down, so it take few hours to recover from that attacks, right? So likewise, we have so many harmfulness because of these malwares, right? The transmission and propagation. Just you can omit, right? Virus effects, right? Attached to executable program, right? So how it causes, modify the file, right? Just you can read those things, right? Yeah, I will. Yeah, wait. This part is important, right? So just omit the previous part. Just virus detection, right? This is mandatory. Right? So maybe if you have an antivirus program, how that antivirus program detect the virus, right? So that is a virus scanners, right? So virus scanners are looking for certain signatures, certain type of pattern in your code, right? If it is a malicious code, they have certain type of pattern, right? If they identify while they are scanning, then it will block those codes, right? That is the way we will detect the viruses, right? So they have some blueprints, or they have some signature patterns, right? If it's a virus malicious code, they have some patterns, right? So already they will teach those patterns to the antivirus programs, right? So also they will hard coded some certain patterns of that antivirus software. So if any malicious code they will find out, those malicious codes are if they match with the pattern, it will stop the execution of those malicious codes, right? So that's why maybe time to time that antivirus software are upgrades, right? So if some new virus pattern is identified, those patterns also included in their engines, the virus search engine, antivirus engine, they include those new patterns, right? So there are different mechanisms to detect that viruses, right? Using virus signature, using code analysis, using storage patterns, right? So these are the three different ways we can find out. We can detect the viruses, right? These are the three different patterns, different mechanisms we can use to detect the viruses, right? Using the virus signatures, using the code analysis, or using the storage patterns, right? So by using these three different ways, we can find out or detect the viruses, right? A virus signature, right? So a virus cannot be completely invisible, right? If it is a virus, anyhow, they have some base codes or some patterns, right? The code must be stored in some places and must be in memory to execute, right? So just you can read, right? So these are the virus patterns, right? So red worms patterns. Here I will explain some red worms patterns, right? Likewise, for different viruses, they have some patterns, right? These patterns are hard coded or inbuilt in the antivirus software. If they find out these type of similar patterns, your antivirus software is blocking, right? That's a virus signature. In code analysis, in the sense you have some code analysis tools, Java or C Sharp, they have some analyzing analyzers, like the code analyzers, they will analyze the code and they will easily find out the virus signatures, right? The third one, storage patterns, right? So based on the storage pattern of your code, that one also we can easily find out, right? Injection attacks, SQL injection, we already know, right? So just you can go through these, right? Mostly I will